Hey, everybody, and welcome to the For Female Founders podcast series where we are helping women in business learn to thrive, not just survive. I am your host, Sarah Bundy, and today, please help me welcoming my guest, Karley Cunningham, who is the founder and CEO of Big Bold Brand. Big Bold Brand is a 25-year. Karley is a 25-year veteran in the brand strategy space and is a disruptor in helping small businesses differentiate themselves through brand initiatives that really kick ass. I'm going to say it that way because they do. So welcome to the show, Karley. Super happy to have you.
It's so exciting to be here. You and I have known each other. It feels like we've been doing this forever because we've known each other for not 25 years, but pretty darn close.
Pretty darn close. Actually, when I was building my company from scratch, all-inclusive marketing, you were one of the first people that I got to meet in the industry. And I will say that I learned so much from you when we were establishing
Thank
AIM.
you.
And as many of you know, AIM has actually become a globally recognized brand. So Karley knows what she's talking about, guys. It's good.
Yeah, we got lots to talk about.
We do. Well, tell you what, we're going to cover brands today. We're going to talk about all things that companies need to know to be successful when establishing their brand, in differentiating their brand, in creating a voice and a standout presence. We'll dig in a little bit, but before we ask some specific questions about brand to help out our listeners today, Karley, can you tell us a little bit about you? How did you get into the industry, and how did you get started with Big Bold Brand?
Great series of questions. How did I get into the industry? I went to school for graphic design and advertising. And I really wanted to go Mad Men style. I really wanted to go to the big agencies, the Chiats, the DDBOs, you name it, back then. But I was a small town kid, and there were all these big horror stories of, if you don't make it in the industry, they'll just like pack your stuff for you and throw you out the back door, and you'll be working 20 hours a day. And for a small town kid, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I'm ready for that. So I kind of skirted the outskirts of Toronto, and I worked in small to mid-sized agencies to start. Started as a graphic designer, and I got to work on so many things, including some of the first ever websites in the tech world. I mean, I got into an agency on a co-op term, and they kept me, which was amazing. So I didn't even have to go through the slog of the big old portfolios. I'm probably really dating myself here, but and presenting, I got hired by the tech agency, and probably also outside of the ones in Silicon Valley was one of the first of its kind. It was in the tech triangle in Kitchener-Waterloo. And so there's lots of things I could talk about that, but the long and the short of it is I ended up not liking agency culture. So I ran away. From it.
Ran away.
And yeah, right. And so in doing that, part of my story is that I moved west to improve my Canadian standing as a pro elite mountain biker. And then I got out here and I went, well, what am I actually going to do with my professional career? I built myself a freelance agency that turned into a company that morphed into a full service design and marketing firm with a partner who had an expertise in marketing. We ended up having a business divorce. So I got lots of stories for founders. And it's just kind of been this, right? And they hurt, but I'm, as a mountain biker, I'm very used to falling on my face. I still do it. I don't want to say frequently, but there's still, still the day where it catches you unexpected and you're on the ground before you know it. And I feel like it's a really good metaphor for business. So I've built my own businesses progressively along the way. They're kind of like version 1.0, version 2.0, version 3.0. So what I love is that I've always been passionate about small to mid-sized businesses. I've built my own. I understand the owner's perspective. And so I can put myself in their shoes. I can put myself in their client's shoes. And I can, with my 25 plus years of agency experience, now honed into, I build strong brands for companies, help them differentiate, and help them build strong business strategies in the vein of, or in the intersection of, communications, marketing, design, sales. Basically, I help them accelerate their growth by attracting all the people that they need and keeping those people happy and loyal and referring. So that's a very quick jump to where I'm at now.
That's awesome. And everything that you just said that you did are all very complex things. And they do need to work cohesively together. And a lot of people don't understand how well they need to work together in order to actually
Yes.
create a brand that has impact and sticks. So let's talk a little bit about what makes a bold brand. What does actually make a strong brand? You mentioned a bunch of stuff in there. Let's even define what brand is. Let's actually start with what is a brand?
Okay.
People think it's a logo. No, it's not just a logo. Great. So please, Karley, the brand strategist, master of the world, tell us what is actually a brand for a company.
Okay. What for a company? Thank you for defining that, because there's company brands, there's product brands, there's personal brands. I mean, even the pharmaceutical industry uses the term off-brand, which refers to off-brand use. So I don't know, let's say it's, aspirins for headaches, but you can use it also to, is it something to do with heart attacks and open the
blood thinners?
There we go. Right. So not going to go down that rabbit hole, but my passion is really building strong company brands. My personal view and the thing that I stick to, I wish I could say that I invented this, but always pay credit where credit is due. This is not mine. I first discovered this equation through Hinge marketing, but I think it's the best one because it's your brand is your reputation times your exposure. Mm-hmm. So let's back out of that a little bit more. Bezos, love him or hate him, he said, he has the famous quote, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So if we're talking about company brands, your brand is what people say about your business, what people say about your products and services, what people say about the people who work in your business. That is your company brand, is the reputation. That reputation can be built based on the first ever interaction, or maybe they haven't even had an interaction. It's based on what other people have said about your brand. They haven't gone to your website. They haven't had any touch points, is the industry term we use. They haven't had this direct interaction with you, but everybody's forming an opinion. So what is that reputation? Or you can, move through, you're an airline. You do a lot of flying. And so you are a points, you're a silver, gold, I don't know, platinum points collector with this airline. You've been flying with them for years. You've probably got hundreds of interactions with them. Mm-hmm. The scary thing about the reputation piece is it can be one interaction that crushes the brand. And I always go to that story where I don't want to name the airline because it's not fair if I get it wrong, but there was a video that went viral of somebody getting dragged off a plane by the TSA and the airline's brand was affected. Well, the thing was, it wasn't anything to do with the airline. It was to do with that person and airline security. So that's how fragile a brand can be, no matter how much work you put into it. So the more work you put into it and the quicker you respond to incidences, the better the chance of putting that scaffolding around your brand and holding it up. So that's the reputation piece. The exposure piece is, well, do people even know you exist? I mean, for the longest time, people, it was actually my wife, used to say to me, you're an invisible expert. Like, you need to get out there. You need to put how are you exposing your company brand? And if you're a thought leader leading that company, how are you exposing your brand, which ties into that brand? How are you getting exposure? Is it by referrals? Is it through strategic partners talking about you? Is it simply through having great design and a brand that people want to wear, like a spectacular visual brand identity? There's so many aspects of it. Paying, follow the peso model, paid, earned. I can never remember the S. Come on, Sarah, you're in marketing.
Well, it's actually interesting on the exposure front because, and I'm actually going to take a step back because you talk about reputation times exposure. Exposure can just really be considered marketing and the touch point, any kind of contact that somebody has with you, whether you're there or not, because it could actually be influenced by another person's discussion behind your back, right?
Or an affiliate.
Correct. Exactly. Reputation can really be attached to emotion, right? People are emotional buyers. So another way to interpret the reputation side of your brand is, what is the emotional feeling that human beings have when they associate with the things that people say about you or how you even represent yourself?
Yep.
So if you were to put that together as an equation, it's almost like emotion times values equal reputation.
Mm-hmm.
because your values are going to have to be built into your brand.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, those values will connect with like-minded people,
Mm-hmm.
which then create an emotion, which then are
Mm-hmm.
either positive or negative, and then people kind of go out and talk about that. If you're lucky, you want them to talk
Yeah.
about it, right? And then you can kind of compound that with added on marketing and added
Mm-hmm.
on exposure.
Yep.
So I love this idea of reputation times exposure equals brand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's talk a little bit about values, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously you need to build your values into your brand.
Yep.
Maybe that's not obvious to some people, but spoiler alert for anyone building their brand. You want to build your brand around your values.
Yes.
Uh, can you tell us a little bit about the importance of building values into your brand? And
Mm-hmm.
how do you do that? How do you define that? And who's responsible for defining that? With Awin's marketing technology platform, you can easily discover the best partners who connect you with huge audiences of new customers. Understand how your partnerships are performing with intuitive reporting and only pay for the results you need. Start today and grow your own way with Awin.
You're the best at multi-pronged questions. Okay, let's go back to the start. So values. Okay, values are tricky because it depends on, well, let's just define how I help our clients build values. I actually call them guiding principles because values, I'll ask clients, what are your values? Integrity, trust, and authenticity. And I'm like, okay, no, those are outputs of you living your values. As an example, I worked with a tech company, I don't know, many, many years ago. And I even remember having a recent conversation about this group of leaders with one of the leaders who stepped out quite quickly from the company. He was the guy that brought us in to do the work. And this was a very like big dogs in the room. You know, everybody wants to be dominant. It's like, we're going to go. Their number one value was get shit done.
Hmm.
And I supported that because it was very clear. It was very descriptive of their culture. That was their number one value. If you were interviewing with that company, you were a strategic partner, you were looking at being a vendor to them, you know what they're all about in that simple sentence. And then what I like to do is, we'll just keep running with get shit done, is define underneath it. And this is the guiding principle part. So you could call get shit done. That's our number one value. Underneath that is the written paragraph about what that means to us and how we expect you to live it through your behaviors and your actions and your decision making in the business. So often what happens with values is you get a statement like get shit done. Well, what that means to me might mean something different to you. To you, get shit done as an employee could mean, hey, I'm going to get shit done between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. and I'm out, like, because I have a family, I have, hobbies, I want to go enjoy life outside of work. For the owner, get shit done might mean, well, if that order or that problem or that thing happens at 4:29, guess what? You're getting shit done and you're not leaving until it's done. So
Right.
defining the expectation of the value statement is really key and important. With our clients, typically, and I follow, Patrick Lencioni's model of don't have any more than 3 to 4, because people aren't going to remember them.
Right.
And you can nest, and I actually do nest. I do an activity where I have, say there's 4 leaders at the table building the brand. They go and check boxes and pick their top 10 values, and then we start to group them. And then I have them tell me a story about, okay, so if these words are all similar and they're grouped together, what does this mean as a value to your company? Like, what are you expecting people to do and how to behave on that? And from that, we build their values. What I love about what I inadvertently created was one piece of how we bake authenticity into the brand, because you bring together a whole bunch of words, you're ordering them that is in a way that the group understands. It is not similar to anybody else out there. You've got hundreds of choices of value words. So what's really coming through is their innate nature, their deal breakers, their wants and desires are built and baked right into the values. And that's one of the pieces, tools that we develop, the value statements, the guiding principles, that helps to start differentiate a company authentically. So that probably touched on answer one of your 3 questions. So where do you want to go from here?
That's great. Thank you. And great example too. Lots of good, very specific examples in there. Let's go back to our first question, which was actually, what is a bold brand? Because
Ah.
you've got people who are like, it's my brand is this, or maybe it's a soft brand, or maybe they
Mm-hmm.
don't, it doesn't have a voice, it doesn't have a personality, it doesn't have
Mm.
any values, it is not differentiated. So
Okay.
what is a bold brand? And how do you make one of those?
How do you make one of those? Where do I want to go with this? I wish I had a manifesto up. There's always these tools that I want to grab as people do these, as I jump into podcast interviews with folks like yourself, because there's always great questions. But in that manifesto, um, big bold brand to me means being authentic to self, stepping outside of your comfort zone. So here's another thing about values is making sure that your values are something you can deliver on and not making them aspirational. Because if they're aspirational and you're still working on trying to achieve them, I kind of do this, and I'm glad this is on video, because this is where we are and this is where we want to be, and guess what, the Grand Canyon or maybe just a little stream lies in between. But if you're telling your clients that these are your values and that's how you're going to be and deliver and show up in the world, but you're still here, guess what, the client's going to go blunk into however big that gap is. Sometimes it's as big as the Grand Canyon, and then you got to work really hard to pull them back out if you can find them down there. So coming back to the big bold brand part is being careful not to be super aspirational, but there are tools that can be aspirational. There's your vision. People talk about your BHAG or your moonshot. Venturing to innovate within your bit, like is innovation a value of your company? And looking at the pieces from what's going to cause us to stretch or be bold in our own way. I never want to scare off the introverts, so to speak, because they're like, well, I'm not a big personality. But you might have big ideas, and you might have a spokesperson in the company who is the one that wants to be on the stage or wants to introduce it to the company. You don't always have to be the voice, but and being big and bold about the change you might want to make in the world. I love working with purpose-driven business owners and impact-driven business owners. So those are some of the things that can go in, and it's like about heart. Are you putting heart into it? It's also about doing things beyond making a profit. Like, what's your why? What's your purpose statement? Are you just here to make a profit and, bleed everybody in your human resources dry? I'm not interested in that shit. Mm-hmm. So that's what big, bold brand means to me and the types of folks we work with. How do you build one? One, being honest and authentic, and having the courage to be authentic, be a little vulnerable, put yourself out there. And when I say yourself, if there's multiple founders or multiple leaders in your business, it's about, what do we agree to as a collective? How is this company going to move forward as a unified, group of people? And that's the unique thing about building a business brand, a company brand, is it's not a product that goes on a shelf that doesn't care what it's wrapped in. And it's just, this is contrived to sell to a specific market and a specific set of needs. That is the big difference between a company brand, a product brand, and a company brand. A company's made up of people who have thoughts, dreams, beliefs, aspirations, feelings, and all of those need to come into the process of the development of the core tools that build the big bold brand. And this is where I'm going next, is when, in order to build a big bold brand, I have learned that there are a set of 11 tools required to build that brand. Now, some people will argue with me on the value, like with tools like the values, that's business strategy pieces. And I'm like, I don't care. If you're missing them, you're not going to build a big bold brand. Mm-hmm. So, purpose statement, what's your why? Values or guiding principles. Character definition. If you're going to dress the company up and it was going to go into your 10th anniversary, whether you're there or whether you're imagining it, how would it be? How would it treat people? How would it make them feel? What would its voice and tone be like? How would it dress? These are all, those fictitious aspects of of if you can imagine how you would dress it up, then you can imagine what your logo and visual identity would look like. You can imagine what the representative who speaks on behalf of your company would sound like on a podcast interview, or how to pick that person, those types of aspects. The one I'm missing from there is vision. I always say if you're bold enough to develop your BHAG or your moonshot, that's great, but you always want a 3 to 5 year vision, because we want all these tools to also be implementable. So you should be able to build a strategic plan off that. So those aspects of a brand are what I call the intrinsic aspects. Those are the ones that really are about being authentic and revealing the true self of the folks leading the company forward and understanding what it needs to be. Then we move into what I refer to as the extrinsic elements of the brand, which are who's your target audience? Or actually, that's always plural. Even if you only are starting out and you only have one target audience that you're starting with, you have strategic partners or referral partners. Always include them as the second one. So then we start to look at, okay, so we understand who we are, we understand who we serve. So how are we then different? And then we get into benefits and differentiators and how we deliver value. Value proposition is the next one. Brand promise. What is the promise of experience anytime someone interacts with your business? It is not a guarantee. It is an experience. If I know I'm going to call up you as you build out your new venture, and then you say, well, speak to my 2IC, I'm going to expect, because you're the founder, that there's going to be some similar aspects and similar way of treating people from your 2IC, or that's not going to align, right? Then we get into beyond brand promise, brand story. And that pulls through all of these aspects of these tools that I've talked about. And then we have pitch and brief introduction. So all of those tools, and what I get really excited about in our method, which I call the Surefire method, is it's not just a set of tools to build a big, bold brand. It's a set of tools to guide your business strategies. It's a set of tools to guide any of the strategies in your business strategies, marketing strategies, R&D. These tools can do all those hiring, exactly, in HR, how we fire people. Like, why does this person not fit? Go right back to your values. So we're already starting to talk about how to use these things that are often thought of as words on a page and statements of who we are. We're already starting to talk about how to use them as a set of tools. So you got to build them, then you got to use them.
What are some of the brands out there in the world that you think have nailed it? Like, you look at maybe it's a publicly traded company, or it's, a clothing line, or, something that the masses use every day.
Yep.
Which brands do you think are the best, and why?
Okay. I'm wanting to go to small brands that people might know, or locally for us, they might be able to check out, but I'll go big brand first because it's easy. Subaru.
Okay, why?
They know their audience. They know they're outdoorsy people, right down to the fact that when we picked ours up and we popped the hatchback and I sat down to put my mountain bike shoes on, there's a cup holder in the back of the tailgate, right? They know their audience down to a T. They know their audience so well that the accessories they're selling, they're bike racks, they're ski racks. They're not your typical whatever things you wheeled to the back of a truck, or it's all aimed at their audience. So they do a really good job. Their marketing is consistent. They just get it. They get their people.
So they're putting their customer experience first,
100%.
Thinking about their buyers first,
yes.
And then thinking about every single touch point that they could possibly experience as part of that company experience, brand experience, which then makes you a loyal buyer, which makes you want to talk about them, which makes you want to buy more of their products and upsell, buy their accessories. So for anybody who's listening right now, I would even just suggest start there. Like, put yourself in the shoes of your customer. Who are you servicing, and why? And how can you make that user experience better, faster, and higher value, or even less expensive than anybody else there in the market? Yep. And then tying all your values into it, your vision into it, your people into it, this business strategy into it. This is all super. And that obviously builds your reputation. And then once your reputation is there, then you go to scale it. You get that exposure.
Yeah. And true to that, I have worked with companies that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years, family owned businesses that are moving to the next generation. And they'll say to me, well, we've never actually done branding.
Mm.
The reason is because they deliver a great product and they deliver a great customer experience. That in itself can build your brand. And that's the fun thing is you can build a brand from scratch from start, or you can build on those other tools and then you can like it's not about retrofitting per se. It's not quite the right word, but you can, it's a
Level
chicken and
up.
egg piece, right?
And you can level up. Like, let's say you have
Exactly.
a company that's been operating for 20, 30 years and you're already successful. If you
Mm-hmm.
put some time and effort into elevating your brand,
Yeah.
at that point you just get to scale up.
Get to scale up.
In my kids' words, it's a glow up.
It's a glow up. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love the energy of that. And I think because of the audience we're speaking to is you can glow up in little ways as you go. And the big intimidating word is, well, we need to rebrand. And I mean, it doesn't, even when people say it, I'm like, ugh. There's a bunch of connotations that could rabbit hole us, but I think the one thing that I want to impart here is knowing what pieces you have in place and knowing which ones are missing as far as that toolkit I talked about. And if you're struggling with a new audience, well, build the target audience profile for them. Like build the tool that you need in the moment and then check back on your other tools and go, okay, based on this, is there anything else that needs to evolve? So you can level it up on your own. Or if you're going to hire an agency, there's many different reasons that you would or could, or a consultant, there's lots of choices. You can ask them is we want to elevate our brand, we want to evolve our brand from what it is. Be very wary of the person that comes in and goes, yeah, okay, we're gonna rebrand. It's like, I hate the expression, but throw the baby out with the bathwater. No, if you make it past cheers, what is it, 2 or 3, 5 and 10, there are reasons that you're still in business that feed and inform what your brand is. Don't ever let anybody take that away from you. Very rarely do rebrands like a full rebrand happen unless there's a big merger, unless there's a big change in business, unless there's a big PR crisis. That should be preventable if you've always got tabs on your brand and you're paying attention to, are we delivering on our values? Are we living our purpose? Are we delivering and making people feel the way we want them to feel and fulfilling our brand promise? If you can answer yes to those things, great. Keep moving ahead.
Yep. And providing value at every opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
That's all good stuff. Let's talk a little bit about how small businesses can get started with this. Let's say you're a small business, even a medium-sized business, but you lack budget.
Mm-hmm.
What strategies can companies use to develop a strong brand if they have limited budget as they're getting started?
I think that any of the tools I've listed, there are lots of resources online. And just have a go at it, have a kick at it. It's you spending time with your team, whoever you decide to involve. And I mean, your team can be your silent business partner, which is your friend or your spouse, because even if they're not registered on the company, your spouse is pretty much a silent business partner, or these people that you trust. You can create something better than what was, which is either nothing or a rough draft, and your company has evolved and you're going to tweak it.
Let's talk a little bit about the mistakes that people make when they're creating their brand, because I imagine you see all kinds of stuff out there as a brand strategist, as a brand expert, people making all kinds of mistakes.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a certain reputation that you're supposed to do something and it's actually totally wrong. So give us examples of 2 or 3 mistakes that people should totally avoid and is no longer relevant.
Okay. Number one mistake that folks make in startup phase is they go right to the visual brand identity. I need a logo, colors, and fonts. Well, yes, you do. However, how do you know what those logo, colors, and fonts should be if you don't know your values, if you don't know where you're going, if you're not clear on who you're serving, if you don't understand your target audience, if you don't understand your industry? Like, is there a particular color that you should stay away from in said industry? Let's talk about finance. Red. No, not going to happen. So stating the obvious, but I get why people want to go there, because we don't go out of the house as a person in our underwear or pajamas. So we dress up in appropriate attire. The visual brand identity is akin to the appropriate attire, but keep it simple. I often tell startups, get a word mark, which is just the font, your name. Maybe there's a little bit of a design flair in it. Get a really nice word mark that looks and feels like the feelings and essence you want to convey, and run with it. Super inexpensive to do. You can do it yourself if you've got any sense of a design eye, or create 3 and, have some of your clients, or who you expect to be your clients, have them help you choose. Roll with it from there, because you can always evolve that. But if you invest too early and you do you do a larger scale visual brand identity, and then you go and do the values, the vision, understand your audience, understand your industry a little better, and you're like, oh, wow, we stuffed that up. That's going to be really costly. So that's number 1. Number 2, where brands go to die, is you spend the time, energy, money, mental space, brain capacity in investing in developing some or all of those tools we talked about, and then you stick them in the file folder, whether that's digital or otherwise, right beside your business plan, and never reference it again. Or 6 months later or a year later, someone asks you a question, you decide to start doing some marketing, someone asks for, hey, do you have your target audience profiles? Do you have your brand promise? Do you have your brand story? And somebody at the table goes, didn't we do that last year with Big Bold Brand? So that's the old way of, hey, we've defined the things, we're going to use them as copy, we're going to splash them on our website, we're going to stick our logo or our values on our walls and just expect people to know what they mean, and away we go. Take the words off the page, understand why you built each of those, people will call them brand elements, tools, and get someone to teach you how to use them. That is one of the things we do in our process at the very end of the process. And we develop those 12 tools. We bring anyone who wants to be a part of it, or anyone the leadership team wants to be a part of it. We introduce them to the tools and we talk about how to use them. And we pick some ways that they're going to start implementing them. We call them activating and integrating them right away.
Are there some best practices around showcasing your brand once you do get a brand identity, online versus offline? Or like, how do you make that online to offline brand experience cohesive? Are there best practices? Are there watchouts that people should consider?
Okay, let me go with a story.
Okay.
And is it a simile? Is it a metaphor? That's always confused me.
We will find out.
See, I'm not right. So one of my good friends in business, he's a brilliant businessman. I will withhold his name in case anyone we know is listening, so they can't pick on him. But it will go with the name Mike.
Okay.
And he was I don't want to say snazzy because that sounds cheesy, but like, he's a snappy dresser. He'd wear really nice suit jackets, but they'd have paint splattered across the back, or he'd have, your typical set of brogues, but they'd have a really unique stitch in them or color. So he just knew how to put it all together. And typically he was wearing a really nice, expensive pair of jeans, suit pants weren't his thing. And he won top 40 under 40. And he got a whole double page spread, and he was so proud of it. And I was mean coach that day. He came in and he showed it to me. And he's like, what do you think? Like, this is so exciting. And I'm like, first of all, congratulations. This is huge. Don't ever do that again. And he went, what? What are you talking about? And I went, when do you ever dress like that? Now, granted, well put together, but he had on, is it the 3-piece? I'm sorry. Suit. Yeah, it was a 3-piece suit, had a vest. It was all really nice, but it was conservative and it wasn't Mike. And I said, so, people are looking for a company that does what you do. The top 40 under 40 happens to be on their desk. They see, oh, there he is. I'm going to call that guy. And then they walk into your office, which is super funky, had like barn doors before anybody had them. It was just a reflection of who he was and who his team was. but it wasn't the conservative guy that was in the ad. So all of a sudden, remember that gap we talked about in values? Same thing. They're just going to fall in the gap going, hold on a minute, that's not the guy that was in the magazine.
Right.
Now, they're either going to be excited because they're going to see these different, or they're going to be like, oh, you're not who we need you to be.
Right.
So don't create the gaps.
That's a very good example. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So consistency, whether it's online, offline,
yep,
regardless of distribution channel or touch point.
Yep.
Make sure that everything from the way you appear as a founder to your team, to the customer experience, to any marketing touch points is the same expectation.
Yeah.
Because then people can you can build a brand around it because that consistency is there. That's what builds a reputation, is the consistency and in the feeling and look and experience that customers are getting.
Yeah. And the pushback I always get on that is, well, but different people have different personalities. So do we expect our staff to live in that narrow description of our essence? And I'm like, no, you expect them to align with it. You know, if your values are inclusive of the word kindness, then everybody should be kind.
Right.
Even the person on the on the phone when finance calls to be like, yo, you're now, 160 days late on your invoice. When are you paying? They can still be kind about it. They're not going to be uttering threats.
Right.
So it's leaving that room. And, that also lends itself to, well, do I always, if we are a dressed up brand, if we are, tight, just a little more formal, or we are a formal brand, then I get people saying, well, but does that mean that we have to be like that even in our personal life as a founder? And I said, well, it depends on how you set your expectations and the stories you tell about yourself. I mean, I will show up on stage. I tend to wear funky suit jackets, and I always have flu vogs on, and I am dressed up to a business environment, but I will tell stories about how I'm typically, when I'm not at work, I'm off in the mountains playing in the mud on my bike, and you can expect me to be driving a 2002 right-hand drive vehicle. Just that's a part of who I am. So it's honoring the holistic person or the holistic team as well. And that's where the fine balance comes in. And that's why sometimes you want to hire an outside person, a consultant, or get an outside opinion, because you're seeing it from the inside, and you need to be able to see it from the inside and the outside.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And also is that reiteration of be authentic, be yourself, be honest about who you are and what your company does. And, you don't need to create this misconception to please others.
Well, and there's branding mistakes. You hit the nail on the head with that one. Don't contrive yourself thinking that you need to be something that you're not just to get business. Because here's the thing. I have encountered so many owners who their business has effectively become a job because they're trying to fit their company into a box, into a market that they don't even care about. They don't want to serve, or the company has moved so far away from their foundation, which is those intrinsic elements. It's faded away from their initial purpose because maybe the investors pushed them that way. That's a big risk in taking investment, is then you're giving someone else some control to steer. Are you willing to rip up your roots, so to speak, to move over into a soil that doesn't work for you? If the values skew out, you disengage from your own business. It doesn't drive your passion as much as it could and should, because we all know that entrepreneurship is hard.
I want to talk to you for 3 more hours about this. I'm sure there's lots of examples that you can give. Unfortunately for this one, we are out of time, but let's end with one last question and then how to contact you.
Okay.
Last question for today is, what do you see as the trends related to branding and brand strategy into the future? And how can small companies be prepared for those changes to come?
It's funny. I'm so not a trend person. The top 10 trends for this. I mean, yes. Okay. Did I read the top 10 AI trends or, yes. But when it comes to brand, to me, trend is a risky word, because if you run to the trends, are you again ripping up your roots? Trends, AI.
Let me rephrase the question then.
Okay.
What do you see as the future for brand strategy?
I think it's going to rely more and more on authenticity and human experience because we're moving into the age of AI, and you're starting to be able to spot when things are written by the AI. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying use it to create the first ugly draft. Grab the GPT that will help you form and refine your values, that'll guide you through taking your benefits and differentiators to help you formulate a value proposition. Or we'll take, heck, I do it as a first draft is pull the brand story interviews, outline what you feel your brand story is, use AI as a thinking partner, feed it those interviews, and get it to spit out a first rough draft of your brand story. Use it, but don't rely on it. And so I think we're going to see brands and marketing automate more and more, and it's going to feel really computerized, right? So the more we can create a human experience, the more we can create value in our touch points, the more we can make people smile or make them feel better or provide that sense of relief in a human way. And you can still do that through technology. But remember, there's always a human on the other side of the touch point of your product, of your interaction.
Not to lose that. And then it will have longevity, strengthens your brand, helps customers commit to the brand and remain loyal.
Yes.
I know that there's people on the other side who actually care about them.
Goes a long way.
Very cool. Love it. Well, thank you, Karley, for joining us today. What is the best way to contact you if anyone wants to reach out?
I hang out on LinkedIn. That's my chosen channel. My first name is spelled with a K, so it's K. Can't even spell my own name. So I'm getting tired from our chat. Karley, and then Cunningham, spelled the same old way since the Happy Days days.
Love it. Well, appreciate you, Karley. Thanks for helping us out today. Good to see you. Great to hear from you. Thanks for sharing your thought leadership and experience with us. And we'll see you again, I'm sure.
Thanks for the great questions.
Catch you soon. Bye. Thanks for listening to the 4 Female Founders podcast series. If you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe, like, or comment below so we can continue to support women in business by helping them thrive, not just survive. We'll see you on the next show.